This is the Diamond Pacific Mini Sonic Rock Tumbler. It's a type of vibratory tumbler. Where a traditional rotary tumbler has a barrel that rotates, vibratory tumblers use vibration to get the rocks, grit, and ceramic media to rub against each other. Typical vibratory tumblers come with a downside though. They're loud. The Mini Sonic is unique among vibratory tumblers. It uses a different mechanism to cause the vibration. The promise is that it's not nearly as loud as some other vibratory tumblers, like this one from ROTARY. Now, I've used both of these for many months, and I'm confident I can give you a good rundown of the pros and cons of this Mini Sonic. If you decide to purchase one, I'll have a link in the video description to the listing with Kingsley North. They're a great company for all of your rock tumbling and lapidary needs, and they've graciously offered me a small commission for any purchases that you make through those links. Now, let's get to it. First, let's look at the build quality here on the Mini Sonic. This barrel is thick. The directions say that you can even use rough grit in it, where most vibratory tumblers say you really should start with your medium grit to preserve the barrel. Now, I haven't actually used rough grit with this, so I can't speak to that claim, but I can tell you that this thing is incredible. The inside, even after more than 6 months, feels perfectly smooth. Compare that to the barrel from this ROTARY vibratory tumbler. That barrel is a thick plastic, but plastic obviously wears differently than this rubber-like material. You get scratches, which means you have to be extra careful to make sure that you don't accidentally carry grit from one stage to the next. Many people who use the ROTARY will purchase several barrels for this tumbler so that each one can have its own grit. I eventually got an extra barrel to use just for the polish stage because I was concerned. Now the Mini Sonic's barrel has a lip here that you hook into this metal bed and then you secure with this rubber piece. Then, once it's all secure, you just turn the dial and let it do its thing. Most vibratory tumblers call for 48 hours or so in each stage. The Mini Sonic recommends a bit longer, particularly for the earlier stages, but still shorter than a rotary tumbler. I usually do about 5 days for the medium grit, 4 days for the fine grit, and then 2 or 3 days for the polish. That ends up saving me around 9 or 10 days compared to a typical rotary tumbler. When the time has passed, I usually take a rock and I'll rub it in between my fingers to see if I can still feel any grit. If I can't, I figure it's done. Now, you do need to regularly check on your vibratory tumbler to make sure that the rocks are still wet, but you also don't want them to be too wet. You're also checking to make sure that none of the rocks have gotten themselves stuck. That tends to happen when you have either a few larger rocks in the barrel or you've just overfilled the barrel in general. You may have to take 1 or 2 rocks out if it's getting stuck regularly. Because you're using less water, your rocks will also have a thick slurry built up on them. Cleaning that off is really important. Even if you're confident that you ran everything for the appropriate amount of time, there's always a chance that there's a little bit of leftover grit somewhere in there, and you don't want that getting carried on to the next stage. So when I think a barrel is about ready, I will typically add some water to it and let it run for a few more minutes, just to get the slurry thinned out. Then I'll dump the rocks, give the rocks in the barrel both a good rinse, use a paper towel to wipe the inside of the barrel, and then I put everything back in with just water. I let it run for a little bit longer to clean off the rocks some more. Sometimes that water will get pretty dirty after just a few minutes, so I'll dump it out and then run it some more. Usually I'll do some chores around the house, dump and rinse maybe once or twice, just to make sure everything's clean. I might be overdoing it, but I figure it's better to spend a little bit time cleaning now than find out I contaminated a batch of rocks later.
Take out the barrel.
How do I feel about the Diamond Pacific Mini Sonic? I love it. I prefer it over my ROTARY vibratory tumbler. It's so much quieter, and I love that I can use it to get through several stages way faster than I can with my rotary tumblers. Now, I don't know that this is really a starter tumbler, but if you already have a rotary tumbler, and you're ready to step up your game, definitely take a look at the Mini Sonic.